Today's episode is sponsored by Future State Media, experts in off-Amazon traffic for Amazon sellers. Future State Media will build you a custom-made website to deliver sales for you on Amazon. Built to grab traffic from search engines and social media, your site can be used as a secret weapon for launching products on Amazon or just to stabilize your Amazon sales. It means you can also build an email list on autopilot. Go to futurestatemedia.com for your free guide to Google SEO for Amazon sellers today. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is the 10K Collective podcast, a subset of the amazing FBA podcast for Amazon sellers who are 6, 7, 8-figure Amazon sellers. Today we are talking to Dave Storey of Amazon FBA Build to Sell, who builds and sells Amazon businesses and helps other people do the same. So warm welcome to the show, Dave.
Thank you, Michael.
Good to have you here. And the subject of buying and selling, or especially building and selling Amazon businesses, is very often discussed these days. Mostly, I've had a lot of business brokers on the podcast. You come on before, and your story's a little bit different. So just give us a bit of a background about yourself and how you came to be in this field, Dave.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so back in 2014, I quit my job in industry. I'd worked for 20 years in manufacturing as a product designer, project manager and planning, quality, supply chain, and also operations management. And I always had a dream of starting my own business, and I just happened to start an Amazon business. Things went absolutely fantastic in the first 2-3 years, and I had that business valued at about $3 million. And I thought to myself, well, I'm going to go on and make it bigger. I'm going to go on and see how big this thing can get. And that turned out to be a huge mistake. I hadn't really optimized that business and built it on solid foundations. You know, I'd just gone on the normal training courses that most Amazon sellers go on, and they don't tell you how to do a lot of these things. And so I struggled to get back on my feet, and I knew I had to do something. And I just happened to have a friend, and he just exited his Amazon business for mid sort of 7 figures. And he said, listen, you need to think differently. I says, what do you mean? He says, you need to walk in the shoes of a buyer. I says, you need to think like about your business from the perspective of a buyer. Don't think of it what you want. It's what the buyer wants that matters. So I thought, right. So I knew he must be right. So I set about months and months of research and speaking to brokers and other sellers and even buyers of businesses. And I worked out a plan for my business, and I implemented that plan and got it back on track and managed to exit it, but for nowhere near what it was worth. So it was a big lesson to me. And I realized after this, I thought, this is just, I've built a process here. I've built something which is a blueprint, which is repeatable. And I need to tell people about it, because I've got so much from the Amazon community over the years. I just needed to get it out there and tell people. So I built a training course, and here we are now.
So that's quite the journey you've gone on. What's interesting is, unlike the brokers that we've had on the podcast, you see things from the sort of man in the middle perspective. You've gone from that perspective of a business owner who sees the value in the business for themselves, which is understandable, and why not if you're building it for yourself, but to transitioning to seeing it from the perspective of the person at the other end of the process you want to have, which is to sell your business. And I guess that, you know, you've had an expensive lesson from what you were saying, that you got it valued at a very high valuation, and then relative to that you got less money than you were hoping for. So I guess other people can, you know, pay you a little bit of money for some training. They're going to make a hell of a lot less of an expensive mistake themselves, right? So that sounds like you've come full circle to now offering that to other people, or giving people a leg up to be in the position you've got to. So tell me a bit about your process that you built. I know that last time we spoke, you just built the course and it was about to go out, you know, all new, and see if anyone wants it, and the usual anxiety. So I understand you've had a really successful beta course launch. So tell me a bit about some of the learnings that you've had and that your students have had from that.
Yeah, so I did a beta launch. I got about 20 students on at the beta launch, and the feedback's been absolutely tremendous. And you know, what I've really realized is that there are so many Amazon sellers out there that don't know that they're sitting on something which is really valuable that can generate them huge wealth. They're just living off the cash flow from the business, and they don't realize that selling the business is the most valuable thing it can ever do for them. And because they haven't been taught the things they need to do in order to optimize the business for sale, they are just going along and doing the things that they pick up from the Amazon selling courses, from the communities, networking, and other areas of information. And yeah, they're sitting on something, or could be essentially like I did. I left it too late to sell. You know, that it could be happening to them right now, and they don't even know it. There's an optimum time to sell.
Yeah, that's a really important point you've just made because a lot of people think vaguely about selling one day. Some people say they're going to sell, you know,
Yeah,
in future. They're very conscious about it, but the timing piece is particularly critical, isn't it? Because I
yeah,
would say, particularly now, having spoken to a couple of business brokers who had a very clear view about where the money is going in the world now, a lot of traditional assets like, you know,
yeah,
retail outlets obviously are extremely poorly responding to the world's events and the
yeah,
COVID situation, and will be probably for the next 2, 3 years, maybe forever, if they get really damaged. And so there's a lot of money in the world sloshing around looking for a home. So there are buyers in the world looking for businesses, but there will be an optimum time to try and put your offering out into that kind of market, right? So I really
absolutely.
think the timing thing's got to be critical. I mean, what's
Yeah.
your view on the timing piece?
I had one of my students came to me and said, Dave, he says, I know why I haven't been able to sell my business now. He says, because I've never thought about building a plan and absolutely optimizing it for sale. He goes, now you've shown me what to do. I'm setting a date to sell it. I'm speaking to a broker. I've actually got a plan in place. I'm going to sell it. So, and I had another guy that said, wow, he says, you've virtually doubled the value of my business overnight. You've put 200 grand onto it just just by giving me the understanding of what I need to do. It's really, really positive stuff. So
That's amazing.
yeah,
The main thing that strikes me from what you've just said that I'm taking is that when you show people a plan that's concrete and solid, and we're going to discuss obviously what that is,
yeah,
um, then the idea of sale goes from theoretical to doable, and then
yeah,
it becomes something you can put in the calendar. And I think
exactly.
that's the critical difference, right? Because you
Yeah,
can't put, you can make vague pronouncements about goals, and we've all set them, and we've all had them. You sound a lot more organized and meticulous than I am. I mean, I've done this for a lot of my life, and I do generally sort of get somewhere close to goals I've set, but there's a lot of slippage because the process between where I'm at now and where I want to go is often unclear, and I have to kind
yeah.
of figure it out for myself. So I guess you had a similar experience, but now you've clarified the process. So I guess the first thing I've got to dig into a series of questions to try and, you know, hopefully ask the questions that anyone listening who owns an Amazon business but isn't yet ready to sell it is asking themselves. I mean, the first thing is, let's dig into why should you build an Amazon business to sell? What is wrong with hanging onto a business and taking the cash flow from it forever?
Yeah, like I said, the selling a business is the most valuable thing it'll ever do for you. There's a well-known formula that if and it calculates essentially if you took, for example, the cash flow from your business for 3 years, and then you worked out how much you would get, or when you sold that business, um, uh, based on a three times multiplier, it's usually 60 to 70% more cash in one lump sum when you actually sell it. And if you think about it in terms of that, and then you think, well, if that's true, and it is true, it's a well-known calculation. So then how much time am I spending optimizing my business to sell on a weekly basis? And the answer for most people is none, because that information and that training and the process, they're not aware of it. So if you're not aware of something, then you won't do it. And that's the whole essence of the training courses, to make people, give them all this information, give them the tools, the process, and a method of planning and putting all this in place in the business.
Cool. So why then does maximizing the value matter so much versus the distraction, if you like, between building a business to sell versus the everyday act of just building the business full stop? Is it that important that we really, you know, try and eke every last penny out of the business?
Absolutely. I think, and that's wealth, and the difference that the focus on the tasks that you need to do to optimize a business to sell can have on your business is massive. I mean, we're talking, depending on the size of your business, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, just by work doing slightly different things on a day-to-day basis. You're actually doing the same amount of work, but you're doing it intelligently and you're focusing on the final selling value of your business. And if you do that, it's likely to sell sooner too, because what you focus on expands.
Excellent. Well, you convinced me there. I mean, adding hundreds of thousands without doing more work. Um, so one of the things that strikes me, and I know that you've had that feedback yourself, is that it feels like a lot of work to
Yeah.
add yet another thing to do, not just work on your business,
Yeah.
but work on making it a sellable asset. I mean, is it a massive amount more work? How does that pan out in real life?
Actually, it can be less work. What I found when I worked on my first business that I sold was that there were so many things in that business, like shiny objects that I'd been attracted to through all the marketing and everything that's out there. If you're an Amazon seller, you'll know what I mean. That I really shouldn't have been doing. They weren't actually driving the effective, positive value of my business. And there were so many things that I should be doing. And when you add these two together, you have a business which is more manageable. It's more focused on a common goal. So yeah, I can see many people will think, "Wow, this is just another thing I have to do." But in reality, you're going to have a business which is more uh, focused and is actually less work.
Excellent. Well, that sounds very attractive. More focus, less work. But I presume there's another question that springs to mind, which is, all right, so look, it's obviously going to be some work to build, even though it sounds like a better thing. But why don't I start that? If I'm going to sell my business in 5 years' time, which is not an uncommon time frame, why don't I start that in 2 years' time or so? Do I need to even think about it now?
Yeah. Um, the short answer is yes, and that is because the sooner you start, the better. It's like these things. There are things that you can put in your place in your business right now that take time to grow, that take time to mature, and the, what I found was, yeah, I only had 18 months to get all this in place, but at the end of it, I thought, wow, if I'd done this years ago, imagine how big my business could have been then. And the other factor to consider is there are probably and highly likely things that you are doing as an Amazon seller in your business right now that are damaging the value of it. There's lots of common pitfalls. There's things that you'll be doing which are not adding to its value or having an absolute opposite effect. So this is why you must understand all the factors that drive the saleability and value of your business as soon as possible, and making sure that you have a plan which is absolutely aligned to getting maximum value of your business as soon as possible. Whether you're starting a new business, and you build it in from scratch, fantastic, because that's what I do. I build my businesses to sell right from day zero. Or you're planning on selling it in 6 months' time. You've got quite a mature business. You need to get on with it straight away. Do not leave it till you go to a broker and then it's too late.
Interesting. And by the way, you're making me really think because I'm working with a coaching client at the moment who's very successful in many other ways as a marketer and as a business owner, as is often the case with some of the members of the 10K Collective Mastermind. The ones who make a good success of this often have a good business head, but they're coming into Amazon Business New. Sometimes people will ask me to sort of help them build their business. And one of the things I'm thinking of in that conversation needs to include, okay, are we aiming to sell this thing? And if so, let's build it as a sellable asset from the beginning. So you're quite right. It does change. I'm immediately thinking, okay, how would I advise a client? And if you ask a different question, you get a different answer, right? I guess I would advise very, very different things. For if I'm advising somebody to build a business that's sellable in, say, 5 years' time, for starters, I've got to project myself 5 years into
Yeah.
the future and go, how does the world look? How does Amazon look? How does e-commerce, marketplace, competitors and opportunities look? So that's very, very interesting.
I,
I
I,
hear what you're saying.
I guess the mindset of most sellers will be that get as many sales as possible, get as many products as possible, which is great. And some sellers do build big businesses and sell them successfully for 7, even 8 figures. However, if that mindset was focused on really, really driving the value of your business through knowing what the buyers are actually looking for, then that business, which is, did well, could do far, far better. I'm talking, hundreds of thousands, millions, like I said. Um, that's just,
Yeah, I guess the sell as much as you can and get as many products as possible idea is not necessarily going to add to the value of the business, right? Because if they're not profitable sales, then I guess for starters, that doesn't technically add to the value if you're
yeah,
basing it as a multiple of profit for starters. So that brings us really to one of the big questions I have, which is what are the classic errors that you see amongst Amazon business owners who either definitely want to sell or vaguely want to sell one day? What are the typical errors that you see in their businesses?
yeah. I guess the main one, and I have touched on this before, was the one that I fell into was just selling too late. Thinking that your business is doing well, it's profitable, it's generating plenty of cash flow. There is a concept to understand that called the product life cycle. Products have a life cycle, and what that is they have an introductory period, and then they have a normal stabilization period, and then they drop off at the end. And it's the same with the Amazon businesses. Depending on the type of product, it could be longer or shorter. But if you leave it too long and your business it starts to drop off the other side, by the time you come to sell it, you're selling something which is either stagnated, or at the worst case, you could be selling something which is going down, and you will not get a good multiplier. You will not get as half as much. No, you will not get as much money nowhere near for your business if you leave it too late. Um, so that's, I guess, is the first one. The second one is generating a lot of extra costs in the trailing 12 months before sale. This trailing 12 months is the window, is the critical 12 months where your business is valued, and it's very easy to generate lots of extra costs. You've got to have the mindset that $1,000 spent or £1,000 spent, and you, based on the 3 times multiplier, is actually worth $4,000 when you come to sell your business. So if you didn't spend that $1,000, let's say you were doing a marketing experiment which didn't need to be done, and you spent $1,000 on it, you didn't need to. That's worth 4,000. So you got to be in that mindset. Other pitfalls are surrounding the supply chain, not really knowing the supplier, and essentially building unnecessary risk in for a buyer. So that's that one. And I guess the other big one is business organization and systemization. If you haven't structured your business in a way that a buyer can pick it up and understand what needs to be done and manage it effectively, if you're the main cog in the business, then that can have a really big negative effect on the value of your business.
Yeah, those all make sense. And actually, what interests me as well about this is that doing the opposite is really going to make it more of a real business anyway. Because you could argue that a lot of people treat an Amazon type business or many other forms of small business are basically a solopreneur activity, and there's an intrinsic tension in the word solopreneur. It's apart from being a bit ugly. Solo mean one person, entrepreneur meaning creating a business. Well, hang on, if it's just one person, I would argue it's not really a business yet, because if you stop
Yeah,
working and the business stops producing money, that's what I would call a job. And Seth Godin talks about this a lot, and I
right.
think he's the most clear articulator of this danger, which is the difference between being a freelancer and being an entrepreneur or building a business. I think either is fine, and you can make a lot of money if you're a top lawyer or something like that as a freelancer,
Mhm.
and enjoy your life and love your work. But if you think you're building a business, but you're really building a job, then it's going to be a rude awakening when
Yeah,
somebody looks at your life and goes, "I don't want that job." So I see that a lot. I mean, and I do also see businesses where people do the opposite, which is their business is killing it and they're hardly doing anything. I'm like, okay, well, why don't you hire some people and blow this
yeah,
sucker up? So, there can be two opposites there, right?
yeah. I guess that's one of the amazing things about having an Amazon business is you can have a multi-million-dollar business, and you or maybe one or two others can be the only people working on it. It's
Yeah,
absolutely amazing. But
yeah.
if you're the only, the knowledge is all in your heads. Look at it from the perspective of a buyer. That's not good.
No, I mean also because if it's in your head, they're either going to have to employ you, and you may not want that yourself. If your
Yeah,
entrepreneurs don't normally make good employees, or they're going to have to sit there and painfully drag it out of you, right? And that's going to
yeah,
be a lot of work. So
yeah.
yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Even if they do employ you for a certain period of time, this handover time,
Hmm.
there's always going to be risk that there are certain things come up after that time that you knew about and you haven't handed over, and
Yeah.
that's yeah, it's risky.
Absolutely, and also very unattractive for somebody who wants to buy a sort of ready-made business. In other words, a ready-made system. And I would argue, in a way, and I'm saying I'm very good at this. You're clearly Mr. Very process-driven, as you would expect from a project manager. And in the end, if you haven't got a system of systems, you haven't really got a business. You've got a business opportunity and somebody working really, really hard, normally you, to make it work. So this brings us to the next question, really, which is you talked a couple of times about the importance of knowing what buyers are looking for. So in your conversations with buyers and brokers and your
Yeah, yeah.
experience as a seller as well, what would you say the main things that buyers are looking for?
Yeah, I guess they can be categorized. The main one is a lower risk. So essentially what a buyer is looking to do is get their return on investment through investing in your business. They want that back as soon as possible. And if there are risks involved in that, then and their risks are high, then that's going to just lower the amount that, or the multiplier that they will offer on your business. The second element is this transferability factor. So if your business is going to be difficult to transfer the assets, difficult to transfer the information, then that's not good. But if it's the opposite, that is really good. The other one is the verifiability aspect. So they must be able to verify that your business is making the money that you are saying it's making. And if your financial accounts are all over the place and you've got different businesses mixed in together and you haven't kept your documentation right and it's not numbered and structured, then it's going to be very difficult for them to verify, and it's going to be a big risk that the numbers that they verified are not correct. That's the other element. And the last one, and I guess the biggest one, is growth. They're looking for a business which has got consistent growth and has had consistent growth over at least this 12-month period. And this comes back to the timing when you sell it. If you think that you're going to sell it and get rid of it when it's stagnated, that's a big, big mistake. Buyers are looking for a business which is growing when they first start looking at it, when you go into the contractual period. And this contractual period, this due diligence could last months. So they're going to be looking at these figures every month. So you've got to make sure your business is continually growing over those months. Because if it stagnates, they're going to back off and they're going to lower their offer.
Yeah, so really it sounds like it's all about engineering slash, I suppose it's a mixture, like all business really, between reading the trends in your market versus engineering from what is under your control the
Yeah,
situation such that the combination results in an upgoing trajectory over the months and months really before you even start selling. And then also you made a very important point, which is it takes months to sell and go through the due diligence
yeah,
business. And during that period, your business needs to look attractive as well. So you made a very good point. So we talked a lot about the timing and the things you need to look for, some classic errors, really helpful. So tell me about what things we need to work on then. So you've said we need to work from the beginning or as early as possible to make
yeah.
the business more valuable. So what are the main elements that will make the business more valuable?
Yeah, I guess we've just touched on it. It's this timing, and in order to accurately work out when your business is optimally growing at a certain rate and is going to continue to grow, you've got to give yourself at least 6 months after that point um, for continuous growth. So the buyer doesn't happen to see a business which is in decline or even stagnating. You need a financial tool, and this is built into the course. So I've built a as a bespoke financial planning tool that you can forecast your business out very accurately for at least 24 months. You can forecast exactly what's going to happen on all your products, and you can working back from your selling price target, You can work out how long it's going to take, how many products you're going to need, when you need to launch your products based upon the restrictions of cash flow. So this software tool has got a very accurate cash flow analyzer, which you can work out over the 24-month period. So you can effectively run your business with a positive cash flow, not dropping below a safety amount, and optimize the growth of it, and optimize the value of it over this critical 12-month period, and ensure, based on your analysis and your forecast, that you're going to be selling in a period of optimum growth, and it will continue to grow. I guess that is the most important thing that you can do in your business if you want to maximize the value.
And so you're really saying that your cash flow projection tool, which by the way I think is really such a commonality between all the really serious and successful business owners that I know in the Amazon space and beyond,
Mm-hmm.
is this awareness of cash flow and cash flow projection,
Yeah,
that your tool is going to really just help you just fine tune that timing
yeah.
more than anything else. Interesting.
Well,
Yeah.
once you start to use this tool, you'd be amazed at the effects of things like longer lead times on, or shorter lead times on your deliveries from suppliers. The effect of knocking $1 off. You know, it may seem just a little bit. When you extend that over 2 years, it has a huge difference on your business value. And this tool allows you to understand and see all that in your business, and build your financial plan and strategy behind hitting a certain target, or whatever that may be, whatever you want to sell your business for, in whatever time it may be.
Yeah, and the other thing that strikes me is two effects on very everyday sort of tactical level stuff. Like when you're negotiating with the suppliers, for example,
Yeah,
they're going to be two effects. One is that you're going to make more business-like decisions because you're going to be willing to walk away from things that really you're not
yeah,
just thinking, well, it's only $1, let's get it out there. Q4 is coming up. You're going to be thinking, well, okay, it's only $1 now, but that's going to actually add up. Dollar per unit saved might
yeah,
actually be a huge difference in your financial picture 3 years down the line. So that's the first thing. It's going to change how you think. But the
yeah,
second thing that always strikes me, and I think this is true for areas as diverse as acting, and I used to work with a lot of actor singers and also negotiation. In any situation where you're trying to influence somebody, having a really clear plan and mental focus isn't something that anyone could put their finger on, knowing,
mm,
because they don't know your inside plan when you're talking. But the fact you have a plan and focus always communicates at some level. And I don't even know why, it's a psychological mystery, but it's true that if you have a plan and a focus and you know your numbers, the person on the other side of the table picks up on it, especially the
yeah,
Chinese. They're so super sharp, right? And they know
yeah,
their numbers. And they're just, it's so you get a better negotiation. That's been my experience. I mean, I don't know if that's been your experience as well.
yeah. That is very true. This negotiation with the supplier, certainly the initial, when you're choosing the supplier, is absolutely critical to you getting the lowest price, to you securing the best level of quality. You've got to go about it in a certain way, and you're right. They do pick up if you're not professional, if you haven't got a plan behind you. So it's very important to not only portray those things, but actually have it.
Yeah.
So you're right.
Yeah, actually, yeah. Trying to portray having a plan but not having one, I think is worse
Yeah,
than having a plan
yeah,
and being cool
yeah,
about it. Because if you've got a plan and you act according to a plan, everything you do will communicate that anyway. I don't think you need to sweat then in your negotiation. You can simply tell. I always tell my clients, listen, the truth is a great negotiation tool. You can say, right, we are willing to pay up to 1/4 of the selling price for our landed cost. Our landed cost is, our freight's going to be about this. You can see on Amazon yourself roughly how much do you sell for. Therefore, the maximum we're going to pay you is $5 a unit or whatever it is.
mm,
And if you're very, very clear in your own mind, you can just tell them the truth. And actually, then sometimes you just will walk away from the deal because for both sides
mm,
it doesn't make sense. But it saves wasted time rather than this kind of used car salesman thing where you just think about the next sales, like they say 6, you say 4, you end up on 5. Well, if the number 5 doesn't make sense, you shouldn't say yes to it. And that's, I think, the difference, right? I mean, we could go into negotiation theory, but I think somehow it works. So what are the main things then that apart from financial planning, um, timing, obviously really critical. What are the other main elements that you should be working on to maximize the value of your business?
yeah. I guess you have to fully understand all of the factors which affect your business value. So the multiplier. This is the multiplier that will be used to essentially derive your business value. And there's a lot of them. There's a lot of things can affect you, and unless you know them, like I said, you don't know what you don't know. So you have to understand exactly what they are. And the other thing to consider is that each business is different. Some things may be important for some Amazon businesses, but less important for others. You may be doing quite well with this thing, but another business might be really poor on it, really weak on it. So you need to understand what these things are, then work out which ones that you can build into your plan, that you can have the least amount of effort, which will produce you the most amount of results. And they're the ones that you need to work on. Because if you're working on the other things, which take a lot of effort but don't produce you much results, then that's not going to really get you anywhere. But you also have to understand that you can't do everything. You cannot work on all these things at once. So you can consider getting them all done or worked on before you sell your business. You have to leave the buyer with some low-hanging fruit. They may have skills that you don't have, like in marketing and in PPC. I don't know. They may have different skills, different connections, and they'll pick up on this. So they need to see some of these things left out for them that they can pick up and drive the ROI through when they buy your business.
Yeah, interesting. Very, very interesting. All right, so that brings me a couple of obvious questions, which is, okay, there are a lot of factors that can affect business value, and we don't overwhelm the listener any more than the person trying to build the business. But what are the main factors, apart from we've talked about timing and cash flow planning? What are the other sort of main factors that you should at least consider looking into?
Yeah, well, I've mentioned growth, which is the big one. And but the multiplier. So, but the multiplier is it's a bit of a black art. It can be made up of so many different factors, and that's what I was just talking about. What you really have to understand.
Okay, and what about the identifying the right elements then of these multiple possibilities? Or would you say the main sort of processes? You talked about the low hanging fruit thing.
Yeah.
So least effort for maximum results, which makes total sense to me. Absolutely. So how do we sort of begin to identify those things?
Yeah, I've got a method in the training course. So you essentially use what's called a radar chart. So you identify what all these factors are on a sort of circular chart with like a rings, like a dartboard sort of style ring. The inner rings start at 1 and the outer rings are at 10. So if you're doing really well on, let's say, conversion rates in your business, you've got a fantastic conversion rate and you score 10. So you know straight away that's not something that you concentrate at all. But if you're very bad and you've got a 1 at the organization of your business, which we touched on, you haven't done any processes, you haven't done any systemization work on it, then that's going to get a number 1. Or if you don't have any financial method, any financial planning in place, then that's going to also get a 1. So you essentially analyze all the factors which are applicable for your business and work out the ones from this method that I teach are really the ones that you need to be working on in your business.
Yeah, that makes a great deal of sense. And what's interesting is that in between step that you say, okay, what are the main elements you need to be good at? Where are you at now? And
Yeah.
but then you pick your fights. So if you're a 1 on financial planning, presumably you're not going to aim to be a 10 at the end, but it needs to be like good enough, I presume. And then you hand it on to somebody who's a whiz at financial planning.
Michael, this all comes down to focus on what matters. Deciding what to do, deciding what not to do is as important as deciding what to do. And this, if you've got a method and tools to work out on what not to do and what to do, then you can focus on those things you need to do, and that's where you get the maximum gain in your business, and you drive the value.
I remember the last time you came on the podcast and the clip that I used, so it's a bit of audio at the beginning, was you talking about the absolute importance of focus. And folks, if you haven't had a chance to listen to that, I'd commend that because there was a big segment that we talked about, which I thought
Yeah.
was really useful, which I know you cover in your training as well. So the other thing is then, how do you, once you've identified, what the possible elements are, where you're at on a scale of 1 to 10, what
Yeah,
you're going to focus on, and what I like it is where you said where you're not going to focus on, which is, I guess, where we can really breathe a bit of a sigh of relief for like, oh, it's not all added work.
yeah,
So it's
yeah.
about what you don't do. I'm glad to hear that. So how do we actually make that actually happen in real life once we've got that theoretical understanding?
Yeah, this is absolutely key. So you've got all these things you know you need to do now. You've worked out from the factors that you need to that influence the multiplier, um, and the value of your business. You know what you need to do in your supply chain, the business organization. You know what you need to do from your financial plan, which is a big, long task list. But how do you get it to actually happen? And this is where I bring in my about 20 years experience in planning and project management. So on the course, I train out essentially a method of planning, which is a simplistic version. I don't want to bog people down with complicated tools and processes. That's not where I'm coming from. It's a simple way of really getting a hold of all these tasks and making sure that they actually happen, building them into a proper professional plan. And by the way, you should be having a planning, if you're not having one, a planning meeting every week in your business without fail. Every Monday or Tuesday morning, whatever it needs to be, has to be right. Let's focus on the plan. Where are we at with the plan? What do we need to do to adjust it? Are we on track or behind? Do we need to do new things? How are we getting on? That's uh, the essence of planning. It's not just having a plan. You've actually got to work the plan on a regular basis, because you're not planning unless you're actually regularly working the plan, and that's what that's what I teach out.
By the way, I think for a lot of people, it would absolutely include myself, but I include a lot more successful and richer entrepreneurs than myself. That I think pretty much most people who start businesses, they have that streak of independence, which you obviously have as well, and wanting to be creative. But that creative type can often not really go very well with the planning way of thinking. So I think it's a
Yeah,
skill set and even a mindset that pretty much most people I know who are small business owners at some point have to get a lot better at. So
yeah,
it's not sexy. It's not like saying here's the latest little
no,
hack. Use this thing and get magically more traffic, and then see the number go up on your dashboard with the sales. This is grind, right? But this is what actually makes you the money. So I'm glad that you're willing to dig into this deep because your planning makes you the expert at this.
yeah.
Um,
I have to tell you that all my greatest achievements throughout my entire career have come from detailed planning and working the plan.
yeah.
And I understand why so many people don't follow a plan. I've seen many reasons why people drop a plan, and perhaps the main one is because things don't run to the plan. Yeah, of course they're not going to run to the plan. You've got to make minor adjustments. You don't change your objectives; you change your strategy and how to get there. Um, and once people realize that a plan is dynamic and you've got to continually adjust it and adjust it and adjust it, stay on that path. It's the quickest way to get to your goal.
You know what? I could have hired you today to tell me the things I need to hear because I'm just thinking about a couple of projects that I've got on the go, and it's not Amazon business as such as related of information products, but yeah, that's exactly what I needed to hear. Don't change the objectives, change the strategy, I think you were
Yeah,
saying. But the quickest way to the I'm just sort of writing a couple of tweetables here. The quickest way to the goal is via the plan. I mean, I guess it comes down to having faith in the plan and your ability to work a plan by seeing the evidence of the results, right? And in my case, maybe I'm worse than your average Amazon seller, but I think there's quite a lot of people that I know that we have meetings, and somebody called somebody on it the other week in 10K Collective Mastermind meeting. They said, so look, so and so, you mentioned this 3 meetings in a row. I mean, he basically said, "Are you going to do it or not?" I mean, it wasn't quite as blunt as that, but it was pretty blunt. And actually, I thought, you know what, he's serving that fellow member of the mastermind really well with this, because holding each other accountable is one of the main things we can do. I really think
absolutely.
it's so easy to state a big goal or profess an interest in X, Y, and Z. Oh, we must do that, or oh yeah, I really should do that. Phrases like that, right? So yeah, I'm really glad to hear that, and I think there's certainly a message I need to hear, but also really generally very, very needed. So your skills are highly needed in this area. I think it's fairly unique that an Amazon seller is putting a course out about how to build a business to sell as opposed to a business broker.
Yeah.
So I know you've got a webinar as well. Tell us a bit about the webinar that people can learn from you as well.
Yeah. So in the webinar, I'm going to essentially tell you exactly how to maximize the value and sellability of your FBA business. And critically, and I know I know so many people are doing this right now. Why not selling your business could cost you millions. So I talked about there's an optimum time to sell. That for you could be right now. And if you don't know it's now and you leave it go another year, what happened to me could happen to you. You know, that's a lot of money we're talking about that you're losing. And I'm also going to tell you exactly why building a business to sell is actually no more work than what you're doing right now in a business. And it could be, and this is what I found, it's actually less chaotic.
Like it. That's a really lovely message to hear, I have to say. So if you want to get access to their webinar, folks, you can go to amazingfba.com/build to sell. That's right, build, right? BUILD, not built
That's
to
right,
sell,
yeah.
which is confusingly, there's a book by a business broker called Built to Sell, which is very similar. Build to sell, amazingfba.com/build to sell. I know you've done your beta testing launch of the course, which obviously has gone down very well from what you say of the
Yeah.
members, and I know that a couple of guys that I know in the Amazon community have interacted with that and found it very helpful as well.
Yeah.
So you've got your new course coming up. What is it? End of July?
Yeah, it's coming out end of July. I'm
Fantastic.
really excited about it. It's my turn to give something back to people in the Amazon community.
Absolutely. And as we were discussing before the show, basically it's pretty unique. I mean, there's a lot of courses, including I've got to admit one of my own out there on how to build the business in sort of general, but to build it to sell, I think is a different perspective. I really
Yeah.
like it. Something I feel I need to think more deeply about as well. So really valuable thing to have out there. So Dave, there's lots of things we discussed, some really, really interesting insights. What would you say are your sort of 2 or 3 actionable takeaways from today for people to go and think about or even start implementing?
I guess the first, recognize your business can be a saleable asset. In Amazon, business is definitely that. The market for selling businesses is growing. You know, buyers are understanding how to work this ROI better and better, how to transfer the assets over to them. It's only going to improve. The forecast is this to improve. So it's a saleable asset, and selling your business is the most valuable thing it can do for you. You have to understand that if you want to generate wealth, that's the way to do it. Yeah, living off the cash flow of a business is fine. It's fine, you know, you could be making a good living, but if you really want to generate wealth, you need to sell it. And the last one, I guess, is if you want to get this maximum value, and remember, it's hundreds or even millions, depending on the size of your business, you must have a plan. You must have a plan constructed on exactly the things that you need to do to maximize its value.
Amazing. That's really, really clear set of takeaways. So, Dave, many, many thanks. If you're listening, folks, do get along to that webinar, which should be available as of the time of this publication of this podcast, amazingfba.com/build to sell. And just remains for me to say, Dave, many, many thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Michael. It's been great to talk to you.